In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. We'll read from the Gospel according to St. Matthew. You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand him over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. And glory be to God forever. Amen. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Of course, the words of Christ, when he speaks, he doesn't just say words. There's a reason why he says it. Does anyone know why? Is the PowerPoint? No. You have to look at me the whole time. Does anyone know why Christ used this in particular to say, if anyone asks you to go 1 mile, go 2? Why didn't he say, food, make ta'amiyah for him as well? Why this mile? Why the mile? That's okay. Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same. Like do more of whatever you don't.
Yeah, sure.
You're comfortable with.
Yeah, but why the mile thing? Like I said, what's it? Exactly. Very good, Mark. He was using an actual example that happens in real life. In the Roman law, a soldier carried a bunch of equipment. So he could carry some equipment, and when he gets tired, he can come to Mark and say, Mark, you have to carry, he wouldn't know your name, right? And you carry his stuff, and he would compel you. You have to, under Roman law, go with him 1 mile. Yani, if you didn't, you would be in trouble, put you in jail, fine you, or something like that. Yes. Ma'amin. Yes. He was compelled to carry the cross. And it wasn't like Saint Simon the Cyrenian. It wasn't like he did it out of any... No, he was actually forced to do it. And of course, he received a blessing after. But this was what was going on. Yani, Christ was using an application that was... actually something to occur. And about 1 mile was about 1,000 paces, or say maybe 2,000 steps or something like that. The problem here that Christ is pointing out is when we are compelled to do something, when I'm forced to do it, it comes yani ghazban anni. I'm not giving it of my own. But what is the wisdom or the thought behind, okay, if someone says, go 1 mile, you go with them too. What are you saying? What you're saying here is you have no power over me. Not only am I going to go the mile that you asked me to go, but I'm actually going to go 2 miles with you. Because I'm doing this by my own volition, by my own accord. Yes, it's me. I'm giving you this mile. And you're not taking from me. And I'm giving you. You see, there's a difference between saying someone takes from you versus saying, no, you're not going to take anything. No problem. We used to see, you see this in the sayings of the Desert Fathers, the thieves would try to come and steal the things from the monks, and what would they do? They would give. There are even stories of thieves coming to steal, and then they would steal, and then they might forget something, and then the monk would run after them and say, oh, you forgot this thing too, and it would change their lives. Like, what are these people? So it's acting out of the gospel of the second mile is that you are acting out of love and not compulsion, and that Christ is the ruler. The first mile is the law, but the second mile is grace. Pretty much, what's it's said here is that you may command my body, but God commands my heart. This is the gospel of the second mile. So why are we talking about this? This is actually one of the philosophies behind Fr.Bishoy Kamel's service, is the gospel of the second mile. And he actually wrote a small book, and I have it in English. It has to be in Arabic first before it came to English. I don't know if in Midatin, yes. I don't know if it's bigger in Arabic or not. I was happy to get anything in English to read, but this was his philosophy in the service, to go the second mile. And in his mind, yesterday we looked at how he tried to become, or how he became the living gospel, and how he acted out the things that he was reading in the gospel to where you saw the gospel alive. One of the principles that we'll go through today is this idea of going further for the ones that I serve and even beyond that. To give an example, what am I compelled to do as a servant? I want to serve. What am I compelled to do? Whatever Dr. Ormea says for me to do, right? I teach Sunday school and maybe do visitations, and that is what I'm compelled to do. That is the law. But Abu Bishoy Kamel would teach us to know you go above that. And unless a kid comes doesn't come to Sunday school, and I go visit him and he doesn't listen. Okay, khalas, I did my part, and you did. Yes, what was required of you. But Abu Bishoy Kamel here is saying, no, you go above what is required of you. So today, God willing, we'll look at going the second mile in 3 instances. The first one is, how far does my service go for those that I serve? وهنحكي قصص like we did yesterday, because it's good to see the examples. One beautiful thing about Abu Bishoy Kamel was that he would look specifically for ways that he can serve. I'm very guilty of this. Sometimes we're so busy, it's like we try to shut our eyes and our minds from things that take us from our busyness. If I work, school, kids, whatever. And I know someone might be in need. I might completely just put blinders on, so I'm like, I don't have time for that. I have other things to do. But Abu Bishoy Kamel would go out of his way. So one example of this was the first liturgy, the Nativity liturgy, Eid al-Milad, that he prayed after ordination. He learned of Wahda, her husband had just died and she was very young and she had 2 kids. And she wasn't going to come to church. She said, she was too sad. So Abu Bishoy Kamel learned about this. So he went to her right before liturgy and he joked with her and he said, he told her, بص تسوني ما بتعرفش تطبخ خالص. يعني حتى لو عندها فرصة تحرق المية ممكن تحرق المية. She can burn water. So he was like, look, I have nowhere to eat after liturgy. We have a long time, we're صومنا 43 days, I have nowhere to eat. ممكن نيجي عندكم and you make food for us and we break the fast with you. طبعا فرحت قوي, and she was so happy. And she said, yeah, of course, how can I take Abuna inside the house or whatever? She said, okay, but under one condition, if you just come to church and then you will come afterwards. And it was from this time on, Abu Bishoy, every feast, whether it be the resurrection or nativity, he would always break his fast, never alone. He would always bring people in. He would always look for those to come. So in this case here, before the feast, we're always busy with something. The deacons are trying to review the hymns. We're trying to cook and find what we're going to eat. We go to Costco or Sam's and get meat and whatever. We're just too busy. Abu Bishoy was busy. But he heard that someone was in need, was in anguish, was in pain, and he found a way to bring them in. This is the second mile. And of course, it's a great practice, if we can do it. And we used to do it here in Tallahassee. When I was here, the servants used to do it. It was a wonderful thing with the kids in college. Back then, we had 1,000 people going to college here. So there was a lot. But it was wonderful to see how the servants would bring them in and those who didn't have a place to eat. We saw the fruits of this as an example, and Abu Bishoy did it here as well. Another instance as well that happened, this one was during the Feast of the Resurrection. Can Fidawrat al-Ayama, the procession of the resurrection, Abu Bishoy saw someone sitting down. Can أعمل كده? بيبان على واحد لما he's going through something. And you're supposed to be at the Feast of the Resurrection, especially during this time, Christos and Isti, والعالم هيصة, whatever. And he was, Abu Bishoy, during the procession, stopped, took the censer, handed it to Abuna Lu'a at the time, and handed it to Abuna عشان هو يخلص الدورة, and he took this person in the middle of the procession. I'll talk to you after liturgy. That would be one thing to say, hey, I notice you're sad. Can we talk after liturgy? No. He stopped it. What was the bigger thing in his mind wasn't the procession. This is what the procession is about. So he took him aside and asked him what was going on. And he said, Abuna, I'm suffering from sin and I'm so lost. I don't know what to do. I'm not taking communion. Abuna talked to him and said, no, you are here to take communion. the thing that I mentioned yesterday about what Dr. Megdi Solomon would say about Abuna Bishoy Kamel, about how like when people would say I'm too much of a sinner, he's like, this is the love that God came to. And he infused that into him, and he ended up taking communion. He said, my dear son, the reason you're here is God's immense love for you. You are so precious to him, and he was crucified and rose from the dead for you. Come, let us pray together, and you can receive Holy Communion. And then he told him, the person, he said, Abuna, I can't take communion. I'm not worthy. I could never touch the body after all that I've done. It's impossible. So Abuna Bishoy Kamel, he said, my dear, we often misunderstand God's grace and love that he came precisely for us sinners. His precious blood has the power to cleanse every sin. Don't waste this opportunity he's giving you tonight. He's calling you to rise with him, to leave behind the death of sin. He wants you to partake of the body of his body, the bread of life. Remember what he said, I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats this bread, he will live forever. And then he made this person experience the power of the resurrection through that. Yeah, this whole thing that we do in church is to experience these types of moments. So these are kind of two small examples of how he tried to go and find opportunities to go the second mile. One thing that Tusoni and Jid would talk about with Abuna Bishoy is how he would always lean on prayer for issues that would arise. And she would say, يعني ساعات كان يحصل مشكلة, a problem would arise, and then they would pray, like they would dedicate the prayer or the liturgy for that. But sometimes the problem wouldn't be solved. So what she said is, she said, Abuna ابتدى يكتشف, or he started to discover that he would stay up in prayer all night, from the night until the next morning when you would wake up. After that, the prayer would be solved. And she said, the way she said it was like he discovered this. The way I took it, or the way I understood that, was that he was, مثلا مشكلة تحصل, a problem happens, and I pray about it, and nothing happens. I'm like, I prayed about it, this kid's lost. What are we going to do? God protect them. And I say that. But Abuna Bishoy didn't stop at that. Tusoni and Jen would say, when Abuna Bishoy would hear about someone maybe leaving the faith, and sometimes a guy would look at a Muslim girl and they would go, or vice versa. So she said, Abuna Bishoy would sometimes come down with a fever. Yeah, he said, that's how much his heart would go out to them. And many of myself, looking at myself, sometimes like, okay, what can I do for this person? I pray for them. I put their name on the altar. No, here she would say, can you dawwar on the way? He wouldn't stop. We would say these are the ones who wrestle with God. The widow in the Gospel of Luke with the unjust judge. The same thing here, persistence in prayer. So he would not he prayed midnight hour. So he found that when he prayed the entire night up until the morning, and he spent that time in prayer, that most of the time the problems would solve. And other times too, this story comes from Abuna Morus Miled. One person brought his daughter. She was demon possessed. Abuna Bishoy suddenly prays, and nothing's happening. You might water, pray on it, nothing would happen. He's like, the demon's like, I'm not coming out. So Abuna Bishoy saw that there was no hope at the moment. So I said, okay, they left, and they came back the next day around 5 p.m. As soon as the demon-possessed girl saw Abuna, she said, Sayamli memberah. And it's like, you've been fasting from yesterday? For Abuna Bishoy, again, sometimes there's a problem, I don't know what to do. For Abuna Bishoy, he's like, to him, there's no, how can I go the next step for this person? I tried. Okay, you did what you could. No. What's the next thing that I can do? Taban, he goes back into the tools of the church, prayer and fasting. So he said, okay, I'm going to fast for this person until it comes. This is someone who's looking to go the next step with those whom that he serves. And someone can say, how can someone think of it's amazing to me. I'm going to say something funny, but it's kind of going to sound weird. There are some shakhsiyat for history that I bistag about. Hey, مثلا Hitler. I used to watch a lot of documentaries on Hitler. I must be like, what are you doing? وش معنى هتلر يعني؟ في حاجات في دماغ الواحد الراجل ده كان بيفكر ازاي عشان يعمل حاجه زي كده. Same thing for Abuna Bishoy. يعني Hitler was the bad example. Here, Abuna Bishoy is the good example. What was he thinking to make him act this way? يعني I put myself in the shoes of واحد gay as a demon possessed and doesn't. أخاف, I think يعني I don't know what I'm going to do. But in his mind, what makes him think to do those steps? And actually, there was a small seeker. في واحد I don't. This might be Abuna Lo'a who said this. It just says a priest from Alexandria, a spiritual child of Saint Abuna Bishoy Kamel. He said this: my first interaction with Abuna was immediately after coming back from my 40 days, the Assis Biak, from the monastery following my ordination. I sat with him and I asked a word of benefit, كلمة منفعة, for my service. And this is what he told me. He said, do you know who I remember at the end of liturgy? I search for every single jewel and crumb, the remaining body, ensuring that nothing is left in the paten. Yeah, do you know what I'm searching for here? Yeah, Abuna, the ladies don't see it too much, but the deacons, Abuna عمال يلحس ويشوف ويريد, shows it to the deacon, والdeacon لا Abuna, there's something here, لغاية ما إيه شرب استبروس, and you finish. But it's like you take all this time to pick up all of the jewels, or the goahed, as we would call them. So the priest didn't know what he was talking about. And he said, I sat quietly knowing that whatever I would say wasn't going to be what Abuna Bishoy was going to tell me. He continued, the jewels remind me of the people who are left unseen and forgotten. We must search them out and never leave them behind. They are the part of Christ's body. And then he goes on to contemplate. Abuna Bishoy Kamel constantly looked for those who had no one to remember them or care for them. Every person had immense value to him. Those far from the church were his priority. Those who were rejected, he accepted. Those who were suffering, he embraced them with such warmth. This is, Abuna Bishoy wasn't forcing himself to go. Or, after reading this in my mind, I'm like, okay, I have to go the second mile with this person. And I'm pushing myself to go the second mile because I'm trying to learn from this. But with Abuna Bishoy, after he reached the level he was at, it just came naturally. Because this is how he saw things. أنا لو قلت لكم مثلا vacuum the church, maybe 95% of us will go, oh, I have to go home, I have study, I have whatever. But then if I said vacuum the church, there's at least 15 4-carat diamonds somewhere in this church. All of us would call our friends to come and pick, because there are jewels here. There's valuable things here. And this is how Abuna Bishoy Kamel saw every soul that he was serving. There is value. They are Christ that I'm serving, and I'm going to take them for Christ. I'll give you another example in terms of this service. مرة واحدة دخلت الكنيسة. She wasn't really too familiar with the church. And she was wearing things very inappropriate for church. Talking back in Egypt, I don't know what's appropriate today is not appropriate. Anyways, it was something that wasn't accepted at the time. So she came to Abuna after liturgy, took Urban. And I have seen priests before would say, "Metelbesish keda," like in front, like to hezza. And really there are sayings in the Desert Fathers that talk about people if they come in not dressed well or they speak in church. Hatta even one of the priests, one of the Desert Fathers, I think Abba Isaiah, he said, if someone talks in the church, correct him. If he talks again in the church, kick him out of the church. But so Abuna Bishoy Kamel, that wasn't his way. Abuna Bishoy, he instead of saying anything, he just went to the house and continued to visit them. And just visited them, didn't talk once about what you were wearing or anything. All he started to do was to impart the Spirit of Christ into them. The love of Christ, and that's it. What exactly he said, I don't know. After a few months, this lady came to the church with a bag of clothes that she was wearing, or that she had, and gave it to Abuna Bishoy and said, please burn these for me. He was like, to why? Donate them to others, maybe. She said, Remember, she was wearing these clothes. She said, these clothes are not able, and no one can wear these clothes with respect. Not even to the point where I will buy other clothes for others if they can't find, but these clothes. You see the change in her heart that she had. And sometimes we see this too in the church. Someone comes with hair that looks a certain way, they're in tattoos or whatever, and we immediately look and be like, how can you be a Christian and you walk in here? Believe me, God doesn't look at any of that stuff. And yes, it can be a sign from the outside of what's on the inside, but in the end, Abu Bishoy was looking at what it was on the inside for each person, and what they meant to Christ, and was looking just to change their heart. And in the end, everything would come. And this is a difficult thing in service. And we talked about this yesterday. And as a servant, I want to see the fruits of my labors now. And sometimes when my kid is acting in a certain way, I feel like a failure. This is me sharing with you as a brother. I feel like a failure when my deacons mess up a hymn. And I fail. But this is not really how Christ operates. We are all here to plant seeds. And in the end, wherever it comes, we are a part of their journey. That's it. I have to look at it this way. And this is how Abu Bishoy looked at it. I am a part of their journey. Whether I'm teaching them in elementary school, college, wherever. It's not my job to make them a saint now. It is my job to be faithful with them now. Just like St. Paul said in his epistle to the Corinthians, Paul planted, Apollos watered, but it is Christ who gave the increase in the end. For your job right now might be the one who's just tilling the soil. You're not even planting the seed yet. And then after that, but to go that second mile, if the soil has weeds, push to that second step to go with them and do it. And we mentioned a couple of examples yesterday. And actually, when I mentioned that story, I went back home. Actually, few واحد that I can think of that yes, I should go the second step. مفيش حاجة نفهم معاه خالص. But how do I go the second mile? And you will fail the first time. The second time, you do the second mile. Best to keep going those miles with them. And don't look at the result. Look at how far we can continue to go and serve faithfully. The next one, these are the ones that we serve. There are so many stories about this. I mentioned Abu Bishoy running after the girl who was going to go marry the Muslim guy, and he jumps inside the car, and the car's driving off. At that point, you can be like, okay, whatever. He grabs onto the car, and the car's driving, and he starts to get injured from the injuries. Another story of one man, كان في خناقة في البيت, a fight in the house, and then the kids call Abuna, so Abuna runs over, and the man is so upset. He's like, he's like, Abuna. So then he runs out of the house in embarrassment. So Abuna, he's running after him in the middle of the street, and everyone's watching him. He's going that second step, that second mile, and what to do. And talking about the guy's embarrassed and things. It's how do we do that? And I can tell you, at least me personally, it's not easy. Like I might get anxious. I don't know how's this person going to receive. I don't think Abu Bishoy cared about that at all. I think he just said, here's my job, here's what I'm going to do, whatever happens, happens, it's up to God, and if it doesn't work out, I'm going to try to find a second step. And I'm not going to be discouraged when the first step doesn't work. And again, we live here in America during this time, we want to microwave everything. We want to stick the kid inside the microwave and he comes out a saint. And I myself am not a saint, I'm still working on myself. And so I do this with my kids at home. Why did he throw his sock on the floor? I'm 41 and I throw my sock on the floor. I'm using a silly example, but I'm sure you can think of other things. So the next one is, this one was going the second mile for the ones that we serve. The next one is going the second mile with the ones that we serve with. Sometimes, unfortunately, and I say this myself, I take my fellow servants sometimes for granted. We're all kind of working together, and I don't value my fellow servant that I'm serving with as much as I should. If anything, my fellow servant that I'm serving with should be, as Proverbs says, there's someone who is tighter than a brother, someone who's more better for me than a brother. It's the same thing here. I think Fi said, my dad used to tell me, Fi wahad anzal min akh, or something like that. I don't know. I completely butchered that one, but I'm sure you can think of it. Abu Bishoy Kamel, when he came to America, he served in one of the churches here. He one time went to the church committee or the board at the time, and he asked for an increase in his salary by $100. طبعا once you start asking the church for money, alhamdulillah, في الأوبرشية we don't have that. But he asked for more money. لا أبا أبونا هيفتح علينا النهارده $100 بكره $200 مش هيخلص. لا الأسس دول حرفيا بيقعدوا هنا. They sit here and they ask for tithing and things. They started opening a whole can of worms. And they started to essentially insult Abuna, and they started to ridicule him and accuse him of all, like a lot of things. And we hear stories of how things like that go. One person who was there at the time was there from the beginning when Abuna Bishoy first came. And he was very weirded out. He was like, this is weird, because this is not what he was used to. Because he remembered when Abuna Bishoy was first coming from Egypt, the board asked him, how much money do you want? What do you need? Abuna Bishoy said, what is the lowest salary in your area? They said $300. They said, okay, give me $200. He's like, when he first came, he asked for less than what was the lowest salary, and now he's asking for more. Yani did America bawazl, like anyone who comes from Egypt to America ends up being ruined? What was the thing? And even like people at the time, they were like amazed. How can he live on $200? And they didn't understand. So he's like, okay, he couldn't. So he's like, he went to Abuna. He's like, I have to ask him. He said, Abuna, why did you do this? This doesn't make any sense. So he said this. He said, my son, my service here is complete, and I'm going back to Egypt. And of course, a new priest is going to come and serve you instead of me. But it's going to be very difficult for him to live on the salary that I asked for, because he'll have a family and kids. And then he would be embarrassed to ask the committee from the beginning for more money than what I had, and it'll cause him to be ridiculed and criticized and misunderstood. Zayman Tashayif. So it will lead to all sorts of misunderstanding, and it's going to mess up his service from the beginning. So rather than allow him to face ridicule and criticism, I decided to ask for the increase. At least if people misunderstand me, I'm done. I'm going back to Egypt, and if my service and people see me as bad, it's not going to affect anything, because I'm no longer going to serve. But if he asked for the increase, it would affect him from the beginning of his service and for a long time thereafter. How does it get someone looking out for his fellow servant? Listen, he could have just said, we should really maybe consider increasing the salary because of when so-and-so is coming and whatever. He could have, maybe it would have been a logical thing to say, and at least someone would be like, wow, you're very considerate that you would do that, and whatever. No. It's like he took all of us, those who serve, priests, bishops, all of us have inside bad things. It's almost like a Bishoy here, Kamel, what he did. It's like he was cleansing the wounds of sin from us that was going to come anyway, so people could just get it out of their system and then finish it off, so that way they can get the money and then the priest can start with a new life. So this is something for us, the ones that I serve with, either in my own class, in my own service, or even beyond that. Am I supportive of them or not? And one of the big things, unfortunately, in service, we see this everywhere, is ikhtilafat in service. And when I say see this everywhere, I mean from the beginning. We saw this with the disciples. They were fighting amongst each other, even to the point where they got upset. Even two of the disciples' mom had to come and talk to Christ. And then we saw this in Corinthians, when St. Paul, the whole issue with the Corinthians was this idea of division. So when we see divisions in church, we don't nistaghrab and say, oh wow, Kanisa hena paisa. No, not at all. I mentioned a story yesterday about Abuna Bishoy Kamel being yelled at in the middle of church with Tusoni and Jin and whatever. The thing I forgot to mention or didn't mention was after Tusoni and Jin asked him, it's like, hey Abuna, how تستعمل انت كاهن ازاي كده to allow this to happen? He's like, this is how we know our service ماشية صح. When there's problems within the church, Satan is fighting against us. But we see this, and there's going to be opportunities, for sure, where there's going to be maybe a disagreement between me and another servant. Another servant wants to go and do a retreat in Orlando. Another one wants to do it in Titusville. Another one doesn't want to do it at all. I don't know. Do it on a cruise. I like the one who does it on the cruise. I'm with you. You have my vote. But so what do I do when there's a disagreement? Or what do I see, like, there might be a servant who's serving with me and they're going through a difficult time. I'll be like, hey, listen, I got it. I'm going to do the service for you. And you go take care of what it is. I noticed that you seem to be, actually, another thing, when you see someone very agitated and it's kind of out of their character, I don't immediately just go and be like, this person, what's wrong with this person? Someone who's going the second mile would say, Mark, in my mind, Mark normally مش كده. في حاجة أكيد مضايقاه. He's going through something difficult. أشوف أساعده إزاي. Instead of looking at, oh, my dignity was taken away from me and how could he talk to me that way and I'm never going to talk to him again. We see this in the servants themselves, sometimes, even above that, of servants who serve very well together and then all of a sudden things fall apart because of one instance. Why? No, it's going to happen. And it's difficult, but how can I go the second step and give each other grace in these instances to where we help each other grow? And as Farah mentioned yesterday, when Abu Bishoy came to ask for more priests, I think there was a Baptist minister who told him, he's like, absolutely don't, this is crazy. You're going to destroy your service, because it was like the rule. If you have more than one priest, the service is done, like the priests are going to start fighting. But he said no. In his mind, it didn't register. Why? Because he knows we're going to go the second mile. And you had the other priests come. And the way that they served with each other as brothers. This story. He said, أنا ما كنتش عندي حاجة. Like, I didn't own anything. I had one galabeya and one tonya. وساعات I would take Abuna's galabeya and wear his galabeya. He would wear my galabeya and the same tonya. We didn't know. And then he said one time, can Abuna... It was in the courtyard. وكان مع أبونا وأبونا عمل do something like this. I guess there was some concrete or something, and it was all he started getting all over. He's like, إيه أبونا بتعمل إيه? He's like, أنا بعلم واحد ما يلبسش طنيته أو جلابية واحد تاني. And he was joking معاه, because I guess he was looking. He had something in his galabeya that he was looking for, something like that. But just to show you, like, he was so giving of everything to where even their own clothes they would share with each other. And I think when the people we serve see the love between the servants, that will speak so much more. And of course, this isn't something I'm coming up with. Christ himself said this. By this they will know you are my disciples, that they see that you have love for one another. And love doesn't mean me and Farah are very good friends, and I love him, and he told me how to go to the Ahli game in Miami, and right? No, love is what St. Paul talks about in Corinthians 1:13. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not seek its own. It doesn't hold a record of wrongs. That's what love is. And when those who we serve see that, that's what's going to speak even more. And so, we see here, Abu Bishoy, I'm sure this story now, even though I wasn't there, when I saw that type of love that he had, it opens our minds to say, oh, those are good examples to see. Like when you're in school and the teacher is teaching a concept and it's not coming. But when they give you an example, or like they do a math problem and they do an example, oh, that's how you do it. I don't know, for those who have kids in school today, you see the way they do math? What are you doing? The math completely. What are we doing? So for me, I'm looking at how to do the problem. I don't know, but then when Luke shows me an example, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. So we can help you with the math. So it's the same thing here. Abu Bishoy, he opens and the examples to say this is what it's meant to go a second mile for somebody else, and for that we serve. The last one is going the second mile, not only for those that I serve and those that I serve with, but those who I don't really serve but also do evil to me. And we mentioned a couple of these yesterday, that behind the philosophy of this for Abu Bishoy was his desire to be rejoicing in persecution. And there are two stories here. They're very well known, but I'm going to mention them because I love them. One time, Abu Bishoy, when he would go, I guess it was kind of back to his house. كان في واحد, a Muslim boy up at the top, would take oranges, ويقشر البرتقال, and he would take the orange peels and throw them at Abuna, and he would say insults and curses to him, and whatever. And Abuna Bishoy wouldn't do anything, and he would be whatever. One day, Abuna Bishoy noticed that this boy was no longer like, he didn't receive the oranges from above, the peels from above. And on nafsi, I would be like, thank God he moved or something. So Abuna Bishoy, going the second mile, goes upstairs and knocks on the door, and he asks, I noticed in the fulan ma kanش موجود النهارده. So the mom said, he's sick. So Abuna Bishoy said, okay, I'll come back later. So Abuna Bishoy does, he comes back, and he comes back with what? A bag of oranges. And you see with chocolate, it's like, it's almost even a sense of humor. When you're able to rise above the problems that occur and the insults that occur, this is how you act. And I say this as a person, as I'm saying it now, I can think of so many examples of where I reacted in a certain way, because I felt like I was violated in some certain way or something was taken from me, so I couldn't respond this way. But here, you have Abuna Bishoy not only going back to ask for him, or coming back to give him a gift, he's giving him the gift that he was... So it's almost, and I would imagine why he was able to do that was because of what we talked about yesterday. Abuna Bishoy saw these as treasures. So I'm just guessing, Abuna Bishoy was handing him these bags of oranges, in his mind saying, continue throwing the diamonds at me, and throwing it so he can continue getting his rewards. Another similar story was Abuna Bishoy, sometimes he had to go by a certain shop, I think it was like a Dukan or something. And the shop owner was a Muslim fanatic. And he would insult and threaten Abuna and spit on him as he would pass by the store. And Abuna Bishoy would pass by and sometimes even thank him. One day when Abuna was on the way to church, he noticed that the man wasn't outside and he wasn't receiving the usual insults. So Abuna Bishoy went inside and he asked a person, I think it was a woman, who appeared, I think she was the wife of the person. So he greeted her and he said, where's your husband? And she was actually startled. Like, she was like, because she saw what was happening. She's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So, so she asked him, sometimes, we're like, intamin, but you really know who the person is. So I'm one of his friends. I just want I've known him for a while and I just want to check on him. So she was confused, and then she went and told her husband, and her husband was actually in bed because he just had a heart attack, and he was recovering from it. So when Abuna Bishoy heard about that, he said, okay, I'm going to come back later. And when he came back with some gifts and fruits and things. And when he came to the door, his son, the man's son, saw him, and as soon as he answered the door, he went back and he said, Dad, Baba, that priest is here. Taban, the guy who was doing all that became so embarrassed and he didn't know what to do. Of course, I would be thinking this guy's coming when I'm down to really, lay it into me. Or even, really thinking in worldly manners, he can really do some harm. But instead he saw that he had fruits and he was coming with love and joy. And this man was so moved that he later became Christian because of the love that Abuna Bishoy Kamel gave. So again, look at the different steps that Abuna Bishoy took. There was one thing, as we talked about yesterday, to just bear the insult. Someone insults me, I don't retaliate back. We think by doing that we've reached some high level. And it is a good level to reach. But look at how many more levels Abuna Bishoy was able to go. He then went, he probably prayed for them, which is the next level. And then he went and asked about them, another level. And then he went and gave them gifts and showed no animosity or anything towards them. So continuous, this ladder of where to go, which is why it's always wonderful to look at the saints to see how they lived. And this is why the Orthodox Church in general is so amazing, because it has the saints, and it really hurts my heart when I hear Protestants and those who don't believe in the saints and they push them away. I know we don't, of course, worship the saints, but I know when I come into church at times thinking that I've accomplished something, and then I look at whoever, whatever saint, I'm like, I'm nowhere near them. But also on the flip side, when I feel discouraged, and I'm like, how can I struggle through this and things, I look at the saints, and I see that they struggled. And actually, I'll mention the last thing here before I get into the last thing before the last thing. This is maybe a ta'liqa that I have about how we in the church portray the saints, especially the Christian movies. And I used to watch the saint movies all the time when I was little. But as I got older, I'm like, who are these people? It's just, prayer was so easy, and I'm fasting, and someone spits in my face, and And I'm like, man, on Wednesdays I can barely stay away from a piece of chicken, and here this guy is fasting for 40 days, no problem. It's good to see that, but really it's not how the saints lived. They struggled. There was a huge struggle that they had, and we don't see that. It's like I say, many people see the destination, but they don't appreciate the journey. And they had this, and of course if you read the Desert Fathers, you'll see that. But Abu Bishoy too, he struggled. And we see this, I'm saying this because we see these things that he's doing, and you're like, there's no way I'm going to get to that. No, Abu Bishoy Kamel wasn't like that from the beginning. And even when he was doing some of these things initially, he was still struggling with it. I'll give you one example from the Desert Fathers before I get into Abu Bishoy. We have Amba Musa this week, St. Moses the Strong. We know the story of when he came in and he was going to be ordained a priest, and then the abbot, to test him, said, "Get out of here, you black man." And the story, as we know it, is that Amba Moses said, "Yes, I am black on the outside and black on the inside of my soul," and he left. And the story usually stops there. Like, wow, such humility. But there's the addition to it in the Desert Fathers, where his disciples went to him and said, "Did you not feel anything when that was said?" He said, "I was so upset when that was said, but I restrained myself." And when we see Abu Bishoy going through these things here, sometimes we're like, oh, he's living on some other planet. No, I'm sure he struggled with it until he was able to get his mind and heart aligned to say, yes, when someone spits at me, I am now joyful about it. I am sure it wasn't from the beginning that he was like that. And we know this actually. Abu Bishoy, he had his diaries during the first 40 days when he was in the monastery. And he would write kind of what was in his thoughts and things. And there were times where he would say, I struggled today with anger. I struggled today with pride. And he would there was some instances where it wasn't very detailed, but like you could feel from what he was writing that he had an instance where he actually became angry. So he's human. He's human. He's not Superman. Or as sometimes they'll say, Superman bleeds. We all have our weaknesses. And actually, I appreciate seeing the weaknesses of the saints more than their strengths, because then it magnifies what they were able to do. And sometimes we can actually share this with people. When they're struggling through things, they'll be like, I'm too far away. Be like, no, actually, I forgot which saint mentioned this, also came from Abu Bishoy. It might have even been from Abu Bishoy Kamel, but he said, no, you come to the church. Our church has thieves and robbers and adulterers and whores and prostitutes. And this is what our church has. This is what fills our church. I mean, we can pick out saints. We're a small church, but churches that have many icons. You can pick out saints that lived a horrible life, but they were able to come back.
We have
Oh, yes, okay. Yes, actually, St. Mary of Egypt, like her story, when you read some of the biographies, even from the Eastern Church, I mean, it was tough what she was doing. But to see that immense change of how that could be, but it's not just to that; it's also the process of struggle. It's not like she was a sinner and then she became a saint. No, it was a process. For all these same things here with Abu Bishoy. The last thing that I will keep with, and this is going to sound kind of odd, this is the last slide always on my thing. I want to, after saying all this stuff about Abu Bishoy Kamel, is to provide also some balance. One priest one time, many years ago, was confiding in me, and he was talking. I was talking to him about how felt like I was burning out in service and things. And he also confided in me, saying, I also too. And he said, one time, one person came to me who used to go to Alexandria. And he said, Bishoy Kamel used to do this and this and this, and you don't do that. And he said, you're right. I am not Bishoy Kamel. I am Abuna Fulan and Fulan. And this is what I'm able to do. There's something, I even say it sometimes, and I'm saying it now, not at the beginning, because I want you to I hope you understand how much I love Bishoy Kamel. Actually, I have his icon in my house in my prayer corner. But I call it the Bishoy Kamel syndrome, where some in the church have felt like the church is now the mom, and they can, as parents, completely just throw, and all the servants are Bishoy Kamel are going to run after my child, and I, as a parent, don't do anything. There is a balance, and sometimes we as servants feel this responsibility so much. Now, I'm talking today about the second mile, and I'm trying with this person and trying with this person, and I can't, and whatever, to the point then, and here's what I'm talking about, the balance, that I start to neglect my health, I start to neglect my family, I neglect my children at home that I have. And this also kind of becomes counterintuitive. I start to neglect my children to the point where now they need a servant from outside to come and serve my kids, and then I start telling them, take care of your own kids before you go out and serve others. As they would say, the carpenter's house is in need of work more than the others. Where this balance how it looks, I don't know. I can't sit here and a talk like this and tell you where that balance looks. It's going to look different for everybody. Whatever you struggle with as a servant, to go to that next mile or that next step is going to look different than another person. Everyone has their own gifts and where they are mentally, health-wise, what they can do. Sometimes some of us feel guilt more than the other, and are able to be guilted more than the other. If someone from church starts guilting me, I will do anything, but I do it out of compulsion, and it's the first mile. So, with something like this, give yourself time to build to this. We all put in our hearts, I want to build to be the second mile where I'm giving of myself freely. And then what I notice is when I start to do this for the first 3 months, I hate my life because I feel like I have no time for myself. I can't do the things in my job. I mentioned one story about Bishoy Kamel staying up all night to pray for somebody, and then he goes to the desk next morning. So, okay, Bishoy Kamel can do that. Dr. Ermeya has patience. If he does something like that now, and the next patient that he sees, and he writes the wrong prescription, he's there's a balance to this, and you have your father of confession to go and everything. We're all talking about this thing. I want to be sure that we're looking at this in a healthy way. We're going to strive for it, but to be careful. If we go to the gym, or if any of you do any running or anything, when you go to the gym and you see someone lifting 315 pounds, be like, oh, that's healthy. Or someone running 13 miles or a marathon, 26 miles, be like, he's healthy. When I go right now, I put on my shoes to go run 26 miles. I barely get 26 steps and I'm gone. I can't. Bishoy now is running a marathon, 26 miles, no problem, and he does it. But I want to get to be like him. How do I do it? Step by step by step. If I push myself too much, it's going to be difficult. But I put in my mind, the problem that we do, and I can never be like that. So what do? I stay home and sit on the couch and eat potato chips. No. We may never get to the point of running 26 miles, but I might run 13 miles. Great. Even God sees that. He says, I gave some 5 talents. I gave some 2 talents. And I gave some 1 talent. Use your talents. The one who had 2, did he ask for 5? No. When the person who had 2 got 2, he's like, well done, good and faithful servant. So it's the same thing here. We put Bishoy and these saints as an example, and we say, wow, they did great. So look for an opportunity to go the second mile with somebody. If this person's second mile ends up being something like, hey, I'm in debt by $30,000, can you write me a check? And then I have my kids to feed and be like, oh, we talked about the second mile, so let me write them a $30,000 check. No, and this is where we go. Okay, so I want to be sure we provide some balance and that we don't discourage ourselves as we're along in this journey. Okay? And also the second mile is different in the sense based on your gifts. Mesela, you might be a good deacon and you're in the hymns of the church and everything. Your second mile could be, okay, I'm going to pray another liturgy with Abuna, I'm going to do a hymns class or something. We're going to really zabbat the hymns for Holy Week Ma'bad. What? It's an amazing thing to do. Instead of just saying, okay, everyone go learn on your own. It's amazing. Why? Because the entire congregation is coming to pray, and you're making it easier for them to pray. I'm sure we all remember and know examples of someone saying a hymn, and you just want to get out of the church. It makes prayer difficult. But you as a deacon can do that. Someone in Sunday school, someone who's open and likes to do retreats and those things. Yes, you can go the second mile with them. And if someone doesn't cook and doesn't know how to cook, and they say, okay, go the second mile by cooking this person 4 meals. Yeah, don't give me anything. I don't want to eat your food because that's not your gift. Fr.Bishoy was one of those rare examples that had many gifts that he developed over time. So you may not, for example, have a gift now, but later you can develop that gift step by step by step by step. Okay? I don't know. Can I want to? Okay. The last thing on this slide, and for good, is going the second mile in the weightier matters of the law. Here we were talking about service in general, and those whom we serve and those that we serve with, and those are enemies. But really, the weightier thing is our families. Okay? And I would even go more so to say, aside from family, is those that you work with. Okay? There should be no differentiation between my job and my church service. And the reason why I bring up job is because you are actually at your job more than you are probably at home, more than you're spending in service. So you are actually serving these people in a certain way. When they see you, they see what you represent. Sooner or later, it's going to come out that you are a Christian, Coptic Christian. I'll give you one example. Back when I used to serve here in college, I worked with somebody at a pharmacy, and he said, "You somehow got on religion." So I told him, "I'm Coptic Orthodox," and he said, "Coptic Orthodox? Oh, you're in that church where the people go to, the ones that cheat and pass the tests around in school, right?" I'm like, "You're thinking Catholic Orthodox." No. And this hurt. This is what people see. They see, even though we may not think it's whatever, but we're ambassadors. So that's for work. But really, the big thing is home. And how I act with my wife, my husband, my children, that's really where the second mile goes. And that is where you learn. That's the gym of the second mile. How am I going to go the second mile with the kids that I serve if I don't first practice it from the heart? Because the home is where the heart is. That's where my real intentions come. We all know this. I can be so nice outside, but as soon as I get home, the mask comes off, and who I really am is there. So when I go the second mile at home, that will help me develop the true heart of the second mile. So, if the house is mekadkiba and it wasn't my turn to do the dishes, or someone is having a bad day and they treated me wrong, I don't say, "Don't talk to me like that," or whatever. No, I can find ways to go the second mile with my spouse. Really, for those of you who are married or about to get married or are going to get married, your spouse is the one who's going to take you to have. This is your gym partner at home, and you are going to bad, and you're going to. This is how marriage is. So learn how to do that. And then with your kids also. For those who are parents or will be parents, it's something to keep in mind with. Your siblings, for those of you who are living at home, your parents, okay? This is where you learn the service that you're going to then take out. But it's not going to work to do this with our children, but I'm allowing the weeds into my personal life where the mask isn't there. So let's be sure that we're applying the second mile where it really matters, so that way the real fruits, this is where it develops the roots, and then the fruits will come out in the service later. And glory be to God forever. Amen. Any questions or?
So you might not cover this already, but some people might interpret the second line as passiveness, and some people might interpret
Mm.
That was not going to fit in at all.
No, right.
In some other instance, you mentioned amazing things about him. Some other instances, he had no doubts. He didn't think twice. One of them was the story of a policeman who was very high in the chain, and he actually took one of the fishing girls in his house. I'm not sure he went to his house, knocked on the door, pushed him on the side, and went to every single room in his house and grabbed the girl and got out of there. He didn't think twice what would happen to him from this policeman who was very high in the chain. So he has the power, he has the braveness, but like you mentioned earlier, he can restrain his anger.
Yeah.
He can control himself, and I think that's the thing. If we train ourselves to control our dignity, our pride, we're gonna be who we will in second morning. It takes that guts.
Yeah, it takes the guts, and I think something you pointed out, controlling the dignity. A lot of times when our dignity gets hurt, it's because we feel like our identity has been compromised. Bishoy Kamel, one of his great qualities is he would say, and Abuna Tedros I think mentioned this, he knew who he was in Christ, and nothing could shake him from that. And that's what gave him the peace that you're talking about. And yani, the second mile here, if anything, that story represents the second mile, that because he had that peace and he was able to go in with that bravery, and he went the second mile for that girl and was able to do that. Taban, you're right, someone could look at that and be like, oh, the second mile is to not cause any problems. I think sometimes there is a room for that, and Nirva asked kind of a similar question yesterday. There's a kid who's acting up, you know, can we take him outside? And yes, actually, I think that should be a thing. The story was around someone who was cursing Abuna Bishoy during Vespers, and Abuna Tedros Mount, he said, you need to go home. Sometimes that is a part of it. That's the first few steps. But the second mile is in what do I do afterwards, and do it. So, he was very brave. And I do know, actually, there are some times where Abuna Bishoy, actually, even with the church hierarchy, he had some friction with them, but he always submitted back to it. So he had that balance of knew when to push, and if it went too far, he knew when to come back. And that's also kind of a good thing to say. He too can be zabbat nafsu. Sometimes he's not going to be perfect. None of us are going to be perfect. Okay, maybe I went too far. Maybe I'm not going far enough. You're always calibrating, and when you go too far, it's fine. I pull back, and when I didn't go far enough, it goes. So a very good story there. I guess that's different than the one when he jumped into the car. And, yeah, so I guess it's like a normal thing for him. المرة الجاية نيجي Tallahassee أشوف ما أعرفش الشيء دي كده الناس في عربي. No, it's great. It was a real pleasure to be here. We're not leaving yet, but it was a pleasure for me to come back to Tallahassee and to be with you all and to share these stories with Saint Bishoy. And I learned actually from many of you when I was here. Those who weren't here, I getting the pleasure. But all of you really have a place in the hearts of Melissa and I. And we talk about you. I still have the book that you guys got me when I left here, the Tallahassee book. It's in my library by itself as soon as I walk in, so I can remember you in many nice words. So continue in the service and pray for me too, and my wife in the service also in Nashville. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bishoy, for blessing.